Hi, and welcome to Education Roundtable. My name is Larry Petricaro, and I'm here with Rich Perfito. Rich is the new supervisor of athletics and activities here at Columbia High School, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. A brief description or brief introduction. Rich has been a teacher, a coach, athletic director in various high schools and coaching in college. So he's been with the school district now since July 1st. Correct. So we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of the position, the importance of athletics in the academic high school environment, and how you kind of balance all those things. But before we get started, maybe give us a little more background on yourself, Rich.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me, and today, and to the district for having me as well as an employee. My background really started, as in high school when I just fell in love with history and soccer. Those two combinations became a big part of that, and I wanted to see if that could be something I'd make a living on in the future. And it really was something that sparked it. That's what I really set out to do, and I was able to accomplish that. I was a goalkeeper in high school for soccer as well as college, and I went right into coaching as well as teaching history. I did take a little stop there to go coach college soccer down at Troy State University in Alabama. To have that ability to work at a Division I program was an amazing experience for me. We were able to play like Alabama and Auburn during those times, so it was a really just an amazing experience from a person from New Jersey to go down to an different area, learn different things, learn about different people, and take that information and come back with it. So I've been coaching for a while and teaching, and then I found myself as an athletic director about 18 years ago already. So this is my 18th year as an athletic director. I've been at Caldwell High School, Wayne Hills High School, most recently Livingston, and now Columbia. And it's amazing because you learn so many great things to do and some things that you don't want to do in the next step. So you learn that along the way as well. But that's a little bit about me and what I've done, and I'm looking forward to speaking more.
Well, welcome. And just as a quick diversion, you mentioned you were a goalkeeper playing soccer. There was a gentleman here named Gene Chiselwitz who was a soccer coach for a very long time. And I remember in a conversation with him once, he said something to me like, what do you think is the hardest position to play, the most demanding? And I was thinking, one of the ones where you run up and down the field. And he said, it's the goalie, even though the goalie doesn't seem to move a lot. I mean, was that your experience?
Yeah, my goal was not to run at all. No, absolutely. No, the goalie, you really are a coach on the field because you're able to see everything from behind and able to tell people what to do a little bit more, give them some direction. The problem with being a goalie is, obviously when things go really well, people notice you a lot of the time, but when you don't go well and a ball gets behind you that it shouldn't have, you're totally that person that they're blaming on. But you learn from that. The adversity is a great thing to learn, and you just take that and you roll with that as well.
Yeah, I think that was kind of his point. It was the fact that because you were kind of watching the game most of the time, when you did have to act, you did have to react. It was so almost spontaneous, it was unpredictable. But anyway, okay, that's a little bit on the side. So, as the supervisor of athletics and activities, what can you give us a little description of that role? What it is that you do, what you have to do?
Yeah, I mean, without it being part of the job description, I'm here to provide the best experiences we can for our students and our student athletes. Obviously athletics, we have nearly 30 athletic programs at Columbia High School, many of them with freshman, JV, and varsity level positions. A large amount of kids coming out for those sports, which is amazing. That's part of my job. My big part of my job is to make sure those experiences, one, are really successful, making sure we have coaches that really are in line with what we call educationally based athletics. And then number two, as minute as it might sound, making sure the buses and officials and fields are ready. And that's a big part of the job. It's very time consuming. It's a struggle, especially with busing lately. It's been very difficult for many school districts to do that. But the goal is, make sure our kids, start somewhere at the beginning of the season with their coaches and their teams and end on a really good note as possibly. Just get better each day as they go along. The activities piece is a big part of it as well, because I really always felt that students, whether they're athletes or not, if they were engaged and involved in some type of activity or some other part of the school, other than just going to school class, which is such a big part of it, obviously, they're going to have that connection to that school, whether it's those 4 years that they're here or possibly when they graduate and look back on what they really enjoyed most. And it gives them a chance to shine. Some kids aren't great in some parts of academics, but now they have a club or they're in an activity, whether it's music. We have so many different clubs here to offer. It just gives them a role to be social and involved and a part of our school and just make our school even better than it already was.
Well, organizationally, do the coaches and the advisors for these activities and clubs, do they report into you, or is it is the organization different that you're more of a mentor to them?
Right. Typically, they'll report to me. But Mr. Sanchez is so involved with us as well. So the both of us, really combine on a lot of activities. But yeah, their first point of contact is typically myself. For all the good things and maybe some things that aren't going so well, and we see what we can do to remedy that. But yeah, I would be that first point of contact for them.
Well, we were talking about you being a teacher and a coach and athletic director, supervisor of activities and athletics and so on. Are there similarities between those positions that are, just almost glaringly similar? Are there differences? Are they completely separate? The role as a teacher, the role as a coach, the role as a manager is different?
Right.
Or the same? Or are there similarities?
Sure. No, I think that they're all similar. I mean, again, especially with high school athletics, as competitive as it is, that educationally sound or educationally based athletic program is so important. So to have, as a teacher, I always thought it was important to find out what a kid's interest was. As when I was teaching history, what they like to do on the side, because sometimes they weren't motivated in class. But if I found some kind of connection with them, they were able to kind of be more successful in that classroom environment and to have a really good camaraderie with the class and myself as well. Same thing goes with athletics. They're not just there to play soccer, play field hockey, lacrosse, or anything like that. We know that's extremely important to them, but teaching them the importance of being a student athlete, which we always put that student word first. And also, when things are going bad, whether it's on the field or in their life, teaching them that as a big part of it. I always did that as a teacher, always did it as a coach, and then we do it as an athletic director as well. And our coaches do that too, and that's the most important part, is making sure we have coaches that are consistent in that philosophy.
Well, having that kind of philosophy as a student athlete with the student first, are there rules or restrictions that would allow you that would keep kids from playing? I mean, if you put academics first, how do you balance that with how do you balance the out of the school classroom work with the classroom environment?
Right. So yeah. The eligibility standards for our state athletic association, which is the NJSIAA, they require for any student athlete on the field of play to have, in the fall and the winter, to have 30 credits past their previous year. So, for example, English is 5 credits. So you add those classes up, typically most kids are going to get those 30 credits. When you go into the spring season, you're looking for what they call 15 credits, because obviously a kid can't pass a whole entire year in a half a year. So in a class like English, instead of 5 credits, is worth 2.5 credits. So about in February, in the springtime, I'll start doing eligibility and checking that to see if they are academically sound to be on there. And then if there is an issue, first I check with their guidance counselor to see, hey, is there something I'm missing? Is there, some kids actually went to summer school and, for our fall things, so they were able to make up those credits. So yeah, that's the baseline for our academics. And I always say this, and at first being a parent, but also if a parent has an issue with their child's grades, it's always it's not a bad thing to, hold that carrot. You're going to play sports. You got to get your grades up in the classroom. Communicate with the coach. How can we get that kid better? Teachers will email me occasionally, or they'll email the coach occasionally too. Listen, this kid, this young man or young lady is not doing great in our class. That type of stuff. Is there anything you can do to kind of motivate them to kind of see the big picture?
Mm-hmm. You mentioned NJSIA. That's the where is Columbia in terms of how that's organized? I mean, it's organized, into different conferences or something like that?
Right, yeah, so the NJSIA is our state athletic association, and what they do is they break that down into conferences. So currently Columbia high school is located in the Super Essex Conference, which is comprised of all schools in Essex County.
And all schools, the size of the school doesn't matter, or does it matter when they play games?
Sure, and that's a great question. So yeah, they're all in there, and then they're in divisions. The way the Essex County Conference sets it up is a little different. It's actually by success of a program over the last 2 years, which is great because it really does create an amazing competitive balance, especially when you're in this what we call the American Division, which is the A division. But you're usually playing against like-minded schools in your regular conference. And then you'll always have that ability. There's always a few independent games that you could pick up, depending on your school and the success and different things like that. You find that right matchup for your school to play.
Well, when you match up, say, football teams, for example, I had thought at one time that was a function of the conference or division you were in was a function of the number of eligible football players, I guess. So you didn't wind up with a school with 200 students playing a school with 2,000 students. Is that right? Or
Yeah. So the football actually is not in the Super Essex Conference. The football conference it's actually called the Super Football Conference, as confusing as that could be. So football, yes, is very similar, and it's by group size. So in football there are 5 groups. Columbia, having 1,900 students, is a group 5, which is the largest. So yeah, we basically are saying, okay, we have 1,900 potential football athletes, whether female or male, it doesn't matter. So that's, Bloomfield would be a school that's similar to our size. East Orange is similar to our size. Montclair, those schools in our area are that. And they try to, also the football conferences matches things up a little bit differently, but they try to get a little bit of a competitive balance as well in there.
Does that kind of approach carry over into some of the other sports like baseball or soccer or basketball, or is it felt that it's not important there, or not as important?
Not as important, and I think in Essex County, if you look at it, there are really some amazing Group 1 programs that can compete. Probably not every day. A sport like baseball with pitching is so essential, but there are some Group 1 or Group 2 programs that are in that what we call the American Division. So they might play a Group 5 or a Group 4 in this case with baseball. So yeah, they look at it as a challenge, and the goal is to get to that American Division and to get your program better. And if you can't, it's okay. There's time. You're not going to get clobbered every day by playing against those types of teams.
Well, how many athletic teams do we have altogether?
Yeah, so we have 29. Yeah.
Those are teams, or those are
29
sports?
Sports. 29 sports.
29 different sports.
Yeah, different sports.
What are some of the sports we might not be familiar with?
So you get both lacrosses. So we go through the fall. You have field hockey, you have football, boys and girls soccer. You have your cross country guys and girls. Different things like that. And then we have our cheer team as well. We use our cheer as a team as well. It's sometimes people that think of. My daughter, who's a competitive cheerleading girl, I always have to say that to her because she knows how much I love her and how much I respect what she does, and our cheerleaders do. So, and then in winter, we have our fencing guys and girls, and we have our boys and girls. Again with hoops and wrestling we have now, and which is actually I think we're going to have some good numbers there. Winter track, guys and girls team. So it adds up pretty quick when you go there.
Yeah. I wasn't thinking
Same thing with the spring. Yeah. So when you start adding that up like that, that's about what you have.
Any rough idea? We only got about 30 seconds. Any rough idea of what percentage of the students in Columbia are involved in some type of athletics?
The percentages, just because I haven't been here in a year, I don't really have those numbers, but we had close to 600 student athletes at least try out for fall sports.
So that's roughly a third.
Yeah. So some of those will be redundant in winter and spring, but you're going to get some new ones there too. So.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, you have a 2 or 3 sport athlete, which is great.
That seems to be harder these days, though.
That's a whole nother ball of wax there that people have to deal with. But yeah, I think probably you'll wind up with about maybe 800, 900 different student athletes trying out for a sport.
No, that's commendable. We're going to have to take a break.
Sure.
We're going to have to take a break for a minute. When we come back, we'll continue talking to Rich Profito about the student athlete.
In America, millions of families are facing hunger. Many are forced to choose between food and other necessities.
I'm stuck between paying for medications or paying for food. John from Maine. After rent and power, I can get groceries. It's sad to say food comes last. Anna from Texas.
The Feeding America network of food banks helps provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year.
I thought pantries were for less fortunate people.
But anybody could be less fortunate in a day or even a second. Claire from Virginia.
Now I can provide food for my family again. It's not a handout, it's a hand up. Liam from Ohio.
No one should have to worry where their next meal will come from. Together, we can end hunger. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Hi, and welcome back to Education Roundtable. I'm here with Rich Perfito, and we've been talking about athletics and activities here at Columbia High School and trying to talk about them in general. It's specific to some extent, but in general is how many students are impacted by that, how the involvement with those kinds of things can be positive from a personal point of view in terms of academics. One of the things, just as a little aside, I used to years ago help out coaching, if you want to call it that, with the kids who were maybe in third, fourth, fifth grade. And the thing I seemed to notice was that the younger the kids were, the more they were concerned with fairness. They wanted to make sure everybody got to play, whatever the sport was. In this case, mostly it was basketball. But as they got older, they began to see distinctions, recognize talent, and at some point, I think some of the kids who were involved earlier would weed themselves out. Is that a accurate observation? Because I'd like to find out what you think about that, and then I'd like to talk a little bit about how you handle the kids who are exceptional as opposed to the kids who aren't, and how that affects a coach and somebody like yourself.
Sure. Yeah, so, starting at an early age with athletics or I think any activity you do, you have a lot of kids you just want to expose to something different. Let's try the sport, or let's try the drama club, or, try doing different things like that. Just see what your interests are. So I think that fairness is definitely there. It's changed a little bit even on that level because like a recreation team, perfect. I think that fairness is there. So many kids at an early age now are going to these high-level clubs at an early age, whether it's baseball and playing 13 months a year, or soccer and different things like that. So I think almost that competitiveness has changed a little bit to that degree, in probably in the last 5 to 10 years extensively, where, I think, that the club programs have, it's not bad or good, it's just different. And they've actually put a lot more emphasis on the success rather than a recreation team, which is maybe for participation. So I think as kids get older, they do weed themselves out, like you said. And I think that's common in a lot of things anyway. They might lose their interest level, or they might not be as advanced as some of the other kids and not play as a result of that. And sometimes it's also parents saying, "Oh, listen, I know what that kid's doing in another town, but and I want to see what my kid can do in this level as well." So it also becomes a competitive level between parents, and I've seen that, and I've been part of that on many levels, and in many different ways. And again, some of it's really good, and some of it's really needs some work. And that kind of goes to what your next question was, and in terms of that elite athlete, and how do you make him or her a part of the team? And I always say, the team is so essential to what we do. When I interview coaches, I'll ask them almost that same question. How do you deal with that? I say stud, but how do you deal with that star athlete in your program and make them, a part of the team, but also make them the hardest worker on your team? Because I think that's the best part of it. I've seen a couple examples where these star athletes are the hardest workers on the team, running the fastest, running the most in practice, doing things before practice, cleaning up things, cleaning up after practice. And then I've seen some star athletes that won't have anything to do with that. They want to just sit. They want to just be fed the ball or different things like that. Those teams, as talented as that young man or young woman might be, they don't have that success rate as much of a successful team would have. So I think as much as we want to preach that team philosophy as much as we possibly can, also want to promote that star athlete. That's not to say that's not going to be the case, but things work so much better on a school level and a team level when everybody is really on the same page. The Super Essex Conference has an annual award through the Yogi Berra Museum, which is in Montclair, and they call it the Teammate of the Year Award. And it's voted on and different things like that, and each school gets one. And it's funny because they always say, it's like, listen, it's one thing to be the MVP of your team. A lot of people are the MVP. But when you're going out for a job and searching for a job and different things like that, and they ask you, hey, what can you bring to the table? Say, my peers voted me as the best teammate of the year, but the best teammate they've had. And people, I think, look at that, and when they're hiring people, I say, wow, that's the guy or that's the girl we want on our team. In our business, in our company. So that type of thing, I think, when you dangle again that carrot in front of people and say, this is what could be, that's a great award. And it's the teammate award is not always, obviously, it's not usually the best player on the team. It's just a guy or a girl that's just doing everything to help his or her team, whether it's on the field, whether it's off the field. So I think that's the ultimate goal that we want to achieve here. And obviously, we want our star athletes to be stars. We want them to do really well, but we also want them to understand that team concept comes first.
It kind of brings up two questions, if I can remember them both. One is when you talked about the clubs playing baseball for 13 months a year. Well, I'll give you that one. But it used to be that a 3, 4, 5-star athlete was not a necessarily uncommon thing. Do you think something is lost by kind of forcing that specialization that I guess must start roughly probably in 8th grade?
Yeah, and it definitely hurts. I mean, the stats always come out sometimes even after the Super Bowl, and it'll have like the 80 guys that were on the rosters of the Super Bowl. How many were how many were single sport athletes, and how many did 2 and 3? And it is often interesting to see that after a couple weeks when they actually do those stats, and you see how many of those guys that played in the Super Bowl played multiple sports, and it's a lot. It's a lot more than people would think. So, and I think that needs to be expressed to people as much, as much as possible.
When you were talking before about the, and I appreciate what you're saying about trying to make everybody feel part of the team, but you were talking about also some of the superstar athletes, if you will, and how sometimes they don't participate. So how does that kind of adulation that these great basketball players or football players, I mean, you read about high school kids in the newspapers these days, how does that affect them, and how do you, as either a coach or an athletic director or parent, how do you try to keep them grounded?
I'll tell you, the more conversations you can have with that person, that star, whether it's one-on-one just like we're doing, keeping their parents on the same page, so as much as possible is the best way to do it. If you're doing it out in a crowd and in front of a team and different things like that, it may or may not work. But those one-on-one conversations before a season starts, as the season's going, and you tell that star person, that player, hey, listen, this is your team, but how do you want to see it? How do you see it going? And you set those goals between yourselves, and where that star athlete wants to go, and hopefully, and I would imagine most of them are going to say, listen, I want to win a championship. So all right, great. How are we going to win a championship? Are we going to do it just with one player on a basketball court? There's 4 others, and so, or different things like that. So I think the more you get that star athlete to tell you the right way that it's going to be, you're on the same page. You have that buy-in from them, rather than, we can't expect kids to understand that. The coaches wouldn't be doing their job if they just expect them to do that. So that instruction has to happen just in a cordial conversation. And again, I think it does have to be impounded by the parents, the guardians. The more it is like that, it's very helpful. A lot of star players will have an entourage with them, and that's a problem, So you could basically, the more you can just talk to that young man or young lady about that, their parents, and keep that team together is the best way you could possibly do it. And that's at least you're trying, and that's the most essential part of it.
Yeah, no, I guess I can see that. The number of athletes that come out of a high school, maybe you have these numbers, maybe you don't, roughly what percentage of those athletes actually play, like on a first team in college, and what percentage of those move on further? I mean, it can't be that big.
It's minimal, especially, you want to say at the college level, just getting a scholarship is difficult. Like, it's very rare. Getting a full scholarship is extremely rare. I've seen soccer guys come out, they get a partial scholarship, baseball get a scholar, but at the college level, I think on men's soccer, I don't know if it's still 9.9 scholarships at the Division I level. But that's what a Division I college is able to give. It might be a little bit more, but I'm not sure yet. But you got 11 starters on the field.
Yeah.
So how's that happening? So, the idea is, you need to have that balance of academics, athletics as a team. But the percentage is small. Obviously there's a lot of people that can go on to play at a college level, and they do, they go ahead with it. And it's always great to have those goals. But you have to have the realization that I need something else. What's my fallback plan? What's my backup plan? It's essential to have. And then at the pro level, again, dependent on the sport, but I mean, I think it's about 0.8%
It's
is
gotta
what
be
we're
a small
talking.
number.
Yeah, it's minute, and you can just do a quick search on that with NCAA and, going on there. But it's minimal. It's minimal. So everybody have to realize you have the greatest experience you can when you can. And if good things really happen for you, great, they're going to happen for you. People will find you.
Now, in terms of techniques, coaching, and mentoring, is it different between boys teams and girls teams? It always seemed to me that watching basketball, girls basketball, they were more cohesive as a team than a boys team. So are there different techniques? Are there different things you have to watch for?
Yeah, so it's a great point, and it actually goes to a couple of things we've already said. I've coached guys and girls in different sports, and which is gave me this background to help with this. But there's no question, especially with the female team, if they like each other, they are going to succeed. They might be an average group of athletes, but if they like each other and get along, they're going to play so much better than they thought they were capable of. That's a big thing. So finding things like to bond, team bonding things and different things like that, where they become friends or get to know each other or just love to hang out with each other, those are the teams that sometimes just come out of nowhere and just do really, really well. Guys, if you can do that, great, they're going to do well. But usually guys can, they don't have to love each other, but they'll still succeed to a different rate. But I think it's with the guy athlete programs, you want to definitely set some different goals where they got to try and keep trying their best and trying to get better and rank them in different things, whether it's races during practices and different things like that. They like to be pushed into that respect. That individual thing is there, and and that's okay. But for the girls, it's no question though that you get that team first philosophy with them, you're going to do extremely, extremely well, and it's amazing to see that over the years, but it's absolutely true.
It's worked. It hasn't gone away.
No.
On a little different note, when my wife and I have been trying to walk pretty much every day, and on the Underhill Field, on one of the fences, there's these posters of all now I think it's all soccer players, and some of the men and some of the women. Was there kind of a reason behind that? I mean, I think it's great, but I'm just wondering if there was why that's there.
Yeah, so from what I'm told, it started during COVID, basically just to have some kind of representation for our kids, especially the seniors. So those are all senior posters out there.
Okay.
Yeah, which we would have way too many. It's it's a senior class now. I don't want to say it's a tradition, but it seems to be a tradition. So we actually have some on Ritzer Field as well on the fence facing Valley Road. Different spots like that too. So,
okay, yeah, I didn't walk down that way.
Yeah, so that's become a tradition just to kind of say, hey, these are our seniors. Let's honor them for their their final season here, and and the photos are amazing. They're just not it's pretty impressive what they look like.
It's interesting the way you were talking about men's teams and girls teams, or boys teams and girls teams, because usually when I see a picture of a male athlete, he's kind of scowling, and you see a picture of a woman athlete, and they tend to smile. It just seems peculiar. We only have about a minute left, actually a little less than a minute. You said you taught history and soccer were your two great loves. So, what was it about history? Let's get off athletics for a minute.
Yeah. I had a couple really good teachers in high school. I loved it. I loved it became. Beginning of Revolutionary War became like one of my loves, and even I went up to Boston several times to actually do some extra studying and different things like that. But that time period became such a cool thing for me to learn. And but just growing up, history was what I loved. It was something I enjoyed. I liked the way it was taught to me. I wound up teaching it. Very similar to that. Just if I'm interested in this, I'm going to make them interested in this. And you find ways to poke different kids. There were a lot of people that didn't think they liked history, but you know what? You teach them about the fashion during the history times, and it's like, oh, that's really cool. I didn't know they had that. So you find something that clicks with them, and that's what got me into it.
Okay. Rich, thank you for joining us. I think we're going to have to call it quits. I've enjoyed the conversation very much, and thank you for joining us on Education Roundtable.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to a great year.